Hello and welcome to StratNews Global. I'm Parul Chandra, and with me today is the Australian High Commissioner to India, Barry O'Farrell. He came to India about 9 months ago and in fact presented his credentials virtually because of the COVID-19 situation. Welcome to StratNews Global, High Commissioner Farrell. Pleasure to have you on StratNews Global.
It's a pleasure to be with StratNews Global again.
Yes, we spoke, I think, in June, but that was virtually.
Life was virtual for the first few months of this year.
Yes. Let me begin by asking you, now Australia has been invited, it was invited to the Malabar Exercise, and Australia had been waiting for long to get that invite, which finally came in October. Now, is it a one-off, or are we going to have Australia participating in the exercise regularly now?
Well, we were pleased to be part of what was clearly a very successful Malabar exercise this year, where along with partners India, Japan and the United States, we demonstrated our maritime capacity, improved our maritime ability and build operability in a way that is good for the region. The issue of future engagements is a matter for the partners, but we'd be pleased to continue to cooperate because as close partners with India in the region, where we're both committed to a post-COVID region that is open, is resilient, and is free. We think it's a good thing that we continue to do these exercises.
So, as I understand it, that India has not really conveyed to Australia that it will be participating in Malabar on a regular basis.
These are issues for those that run the exercises, just as Australian exercises are those matters for Australia. But as I say, I think sometimes Malabar, no matter how successful it was, has masked the fact that over the last 6 years, we've had a quadrupling in the engagements between India and Australia in the defence area. So last year, Australia participated in AusIndex. AusIndex at that stage was the largest naval bilateral exercise we've been part of and one of the most complex, involving submarine serials and flights over the Bay of Bengal. So there's been lots going on in the defence sphere, and I just think what we saw with Malabar, I suppose in a sense reflects some of the ambition set for the India-Australia relationship in the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership.
Since you mentioned the growing cooperation between India and Australia in the defence sector, I wanted to ask you about the Mutual Logistics Support Agreement, which was signed during the summit between Prime Minister Modi and your Prime Minister in June this year. Now, what does this agreement mean for cooperation on the defence front for the two countries?
Well, it effectively means that both or partners to an MLSA have a better understanding and cooperation, but through trials and exercises of how each other's services operates. So what we saw during the exercise Malabar was our vessel, HMAS Ballarat, fuelled on the water by Indian naval ships Shakti and Deepak, which in essence demonstrates what the MLSA is about. Both sides or all sides of an exercise being able to meet the needs of the other in a seamless way. And why is that important? Well, it's important when you're looking to provide some confidence to a region where, for instance, India and Australia rely on the Indian Ocean for most of our trade and most of our commerce. We want to address issues, whether they're maritime threats or in the case of disasters, in a way that combines both of our assets to amplify them for the benefit of those people we're assisting.
Taking you back to the Malabar exercise, now it also meant, with Australia joining in, that all the four Quad countries came together for the exercise, and now there is a lot of conversation and discussion about the militarization of the Quad. Is it happening? I mean, is it becoming a reality?
I don't believe so, because the Quad is a diplomatic forum where for a number of years, firstly our foreign secretaries and now our foreign ministers have met to discuss issues that have affected the region. Some of those issues were cybersecurity, some of them were maritime security, some of them were piracy, terrorism. More recently, over the past 9 to 10 months, they've been around health cooperation, particularly at a time of COVID. And as we saw at the last Quad meeting in Tokyo, they talked about resilient supply chains, the importance of ensuring that strategic supply chains are protected should there be another pandemic. So this is about 4 countries coming together to discuss diplomatic issues. The Malabar Exercise is separate, albeit involving the same countries. But as I said before, it's about trying to ensure that we work together to deliver the sort of post-COVID world we want for the region, which is about security, it's about openness, it's about sovereignty, and it's about prosperity.
But the Chinese foreign minister doesn't seem to think so, because he was quoted a few months ago as saying that the US is trying to come up with an Indo-Pacific NATO. And obviously he was expressing his country's concerns about the Quad and now Australia joining in the Malabar. What would you say to that?
Well, countries can have concerns, but the reality is that the Quad is not, nor does Australia support the Quad becoming a NATO-type organisation. It will continue to engage on issues that not only are relevant to those countries, but as my foreign minister said at the last Quad meeting, the Quad has a positive agenda, an agenda about a region in which countries can exercise their sovereignty, where rules and norms apply in relation to any disputes, where people are able to live securely and openly. And as we demonstrate after each Quad meeting with our ASEAN neighbours and friends, those who live in our region are welcome to sign up to it. But, you know, I accept the fact that people will have different perspectives, but it doesn't make those perspectives accurate.
High Commissioner Farrell, what about the Indo-Pacific? And the Indo-Pacific vision, a lot of other countries are coming up with it. Germany's come up with it, France, now recently Netherlands. And in fact, when the Prime Ministers of India and Australia had their summit, there was a separate statement, a very detailed one on the maritime vision for the region. So is all this meant to as a counter to China?
No, I think it's in part a reflection of how important the Indo-Pacific is becoming across the world. We're seeing a shift of power and wealth from the north to the south, from the traditional axis of Europe and North America to the Indo-Pacific. And as I said before, the fact is that for both of our countries, India and Australia, so much of our economic activity and our trade depends on freedom of movement across the Indian Ocean. And when the Prime Ministers met together on the 4th of June, virtually, they talked about their sacred duty of guaranteeing a post-COVID Indo-Pacific that, as I say, respects sovereignty, abides by the international rules and norms, and seeks to provide their citizens with a secure and free future.
Talking about China, now Australia is in the middle of a really bitter spat with China, and it began with the Australian Prime Minister seeking an inquiry into the origins of the coronavirus, and thereafter it's just spiraled downwards. Now, Australia has a very deep relationship with China. It's your largest trading partner. Now, where do things stand?
Well, I think firstly, it would be a shame if indeed it's accurate that China's recent decisions around trade in Australia were based on our decision or call a number of months ago to have an independent review into the way in which the pandemic has been handled by a multilateral organisation, the World Health Organisation. Because by any measure, standard practice or just good practice, whenever something as cataclysmic as this happens, we should ensure those organisations who've been responsible for leading the effort to eradicate it are reviewed to try and guarantee to citizens and countries that the next time they'll be able to do an even better job. Australia is a big supporter of the World Health Organisation, as is India. We're a funder of it. We see how it does good work within particularly the Pacific region near us. India, of course, has known it more personally for a longer time, and we're delighted at the current time that that your health minister chairs Executive Council. But the decision we took, supported by more than 150 countries, to have a review of the World Health Organization, by any measure was sensible, wasn't meant to upset anybody. And if people are upset, you have to ask them why. In relation to our trade position with China, we continue to seek to have good trading relations with all of those who buy, whether agricultural products, resources, services or other things from Australia. We start from the outset assuming that people are buying things from us because they want those things, that those things are a benefit to them. We're not forcing them upon people. But regrettably, we have seen over the course of this year a number of issues raised. We will seek, where we believe it appropriate, to refer those matters to the appropriate multilateral institutions who are there to help resolve these matters, whether the World Trade Organization or others. But at the end of the day, we want to have a respectful relationship with our trading partners, including China. China is the number one trading partner of many countries around the world. But I also say that I'm old enough to have remembered that when I was born, most of Australia's products went to the UK. Then when the UK entered the common market, we had to find other markets. And we found other markets across Asia, across North America and other places. Australia is a trading partner. We have elements to even offer India in terms of its self-reliant policy. And we offer those things and we seek to trade those things on the basis that those countries buying them will use them to grow their own economies. So we will continue to be respectful in our trading relations. We will continue to trade honestly and fairly with people. We believe in a liberal, open, free trade environment, and we'll continue to offer our goods to the world.
But now that China has imposed tariffs on items like barley, on wine, and Australia, in fact, is going to the WTO on the tariffs on barley, does it mean that Australia is going to look at other trading avenues? It's going to explore trade with other countries, including India?
Well, historically, as I say, when markets have closed or dried up, we've looked for other markets. That's the nature of a country that, for all of its European settlement, has sought to be a trading nation with the world, which delivered until COVID a generation of continuous economic growth. But yes, I'm delighted to say that as part of our Prime Minister's Comprehensive Strategic Partnership in June, they agreed to boost trade and investment between our two countries. They agreed to reopen the engagement on a comprehensive economic cooperation agreement between our two countries, in other words, a free trade agreement between our two countries. And actions are already underway. So last month we had an Australian-sponsored virtual meeting between the National Infrastructure and Investment Fund and the largest superannuation funds in Australia, because one of those things we can offer to India that's keen to build more infrastructure for its citizens, whether they're roads, whether they're airports, whether they're other elements, are some of the pension funds that exist in Australia who are looking for long-term investments in stable democracies around the world. And as I say, we're, in the meantime, whilst they're working on the big picture, we're seeing continuation of improvements at other levels. So in August of this year, pomegranates, Indian pomegranates, are being sold into the Australian market, and that probably makes up in some way for the malt barley that comes into Bengaluru and other places where beer is brewed in India. So the relationship is progressing. We're seeing across the board, whether in education, which despite the pandemic is still seeing strong interest, through agriculture, into areas like cyber and critical technologies, or the amazing amount of research that's going on at all levels between institutions, companies and citizens of both our countries.
Now, Australia has joined RCEP. Are you disappointed that India did not join the...
We recognise that a country's decision to join an agreement like RCEP is based on that country's national interests. So we respect India's decision. We know that India will continue to have observer status at RCEP meetings. We know that India can, notwithstanding the fact that it didn't sign, engage in some of those activities that RCEP will be involved in. And we also know that at any time that it wants to, the door remains open for India to sign up to RCEP. But Australia made its decision positively for itself, because we judged that that free trade pact that involves 15 or 14 or so countries across our part of the world is a good thing for Australia as a trading nation to be part of. India made its own decision. It's a decision we respect.
Now, another issue is that of uranium sales to India. Now, the two countries signed a pact, I think, 5 or 6 years ago, but the commercial sales have not taken off. What is the reason?
Well, I think, firstly, the agreement holds, and the sale of uranium for civil purposes is possible under that agreement. If the opportunity arises, I'm sure our producers will seek to do that. But I think if you check what practically happened in the intervening period when there wasn't an agreement with Australia, was a number of other suppliers from around the world locked in long-term contracts. So ultimately, this is a transactional process.
Yes.
If contracts are in place, there is no room to enter. If contracts come up for renewal, that's when opportunities arise.
So you mean to say that India is yet to offer any contract to Australian companies?
But this is a free market. So India looks to buy products from time to time within the world market. And at the time that at the time when we hadn't reached agreement with India, prior to that, a number of contracts were entered into by India, which were long-term contracts.
Okay.
Long-term contracts in some of these things are more than 5 or 6 years.
Okay, because I did read that there was meetings have been going on this issue, but
we continue to engage with India because we're keen to know when and if opportunities will arise to enable Australian uranium to be shipped to India. But as I say, so we continue to look for those opportunities. They haven't come up, and the practical reason they haven't come up is because of existing contracts.
Are you disappointed that they haven't begun yet commercial sale of uranium to India?
If I wasn't a diplomat, I could say that I'd be disappointed that we didn't get in earlier.
Yes.
Before we had the on-again, off-again approach to India on uranium sales.
Okay.
But I am a diplomat, so I wouldn't say that.
Now, coming to India's own tensions with China, and now we've had a face-off going on at the border on the LAC since April. How does Australia see this face-off between the two countries?
Well, Australia certainly appreciates efforts to de-escalate tensions at the border. Australia opposes any unilateral actions in relation to the LAC, and we believe that resolution of these issues ought to be through those bilateral processes that have been in place in the past. Our concern about unilateral action is that all that does is escalate the risk of further aggression and further problems. But we certainly admire the patience and the attempts to de-escalate by India.
Do you see the Chinese aggression on the LOC as part of a larger pattern or picture of Chinese muscle flexing in the region and in the Indo-Pacific region?
Well, I don't have a perspective on that because, to be honest, Australia is respectful of India and its efforts to resolve that issue with China. It wouldn't be appropriate for us to comment beyond what I've said. But certainly, my Prime Minister, when he announced a significant increase to our defence budget in August, made the point that we're going to emerge into a post-COVID world that is more disorderly, more dangerous and poorer because our economies have suffered. And what Australia is doing through its defence step up, through its investment in cyber technology and security, is to ensure that we're better placed to either bring order to a more disorderly world or to defend ourselves and our citizens in the case of a dangerous world. And ultimately, within the Indo-Pacific, as I've said before, we're working with India, we're working with other partners to try and deliver a post-COVID Indo-Pacific that is respectful of rules and norms, that is peaceful, that respects sovereignty, and that provides security and openness to its citizens.
My final question, High Commissioner, and this is about COVID-19 vaccine. Is Australia looking to get supplies of COVID vaccine from India, given that we are the largest manufacturers of vaccines in the world?
So Australia has made a number of agreements already, not with India, in order to purchase the vaccine, not just for Australia, but in the same way that India looks after its neighbours, Australia is looking to also assist the Pacific and Timor-Leste with the vaccine. So we have made and placed some orders in relation to those vaccines. But I went to Hyderabad a week or two ago. I was incredibly impressed. Whether it's Hyderabad, whether it's Pune, the fact is that when the world looks back on this pandemic, one of the things that they'll remember with fond hearts and great trust is the fact that India has the capacity to produce this vaccine in the quantities required by global citizenry. As I said the other day, many countries are working on their own vaccines, but there's only one country that can deliver the vaccine in the quantities required. Mm-hmm. And of course, when you're talking about an Australian order, which might be 50 million, it's a fraction of India's population, let alone the global population. We're a small part of the demand for this vaccine. Happily, we've secured it. More happily, the Australian government has bought it for the neighbourhood, and we look forward to it being rolled out.
I said that was my final question, but I couldn't resist asking you this final question is, what's it been like working as the High Commissioner during this very difficult time of COVID, when meetings are restricted, when outreach is restricted? How do you go about it?
Well, the good news is I've had lots of reading time because there's not been anything else to do. The bad news is that having come from a political background, the networking has been restricted to telephone calls, emails or virtuals, mm-hmm. and none of those are great ways to make close friends, yes. firm friends, trusting friends. Right. So I'm delighted to see that India's COVID situation is improving. I'm delighted as a citizen of Delhi to see that it's reducing here. I think India has done a magnificent job. I came to India in mid-February to some pretty horrific projections as to what COVID would do to India by May, June, July. I'm happy that none of those projections were anywhere near right. I'm delighted that, for instance, India has the lowest death rate from COVID anywhere in the world. I recognise, and I tell this to people I deal with on a daily basis, that whilst the COVID rate, cases per million in India might be 6 times Australia's, we're a small country, but 6 times Australia's, but you are about a third of the UK's and about a fifth of the US's. So mm-hmm. by any measure, India has done well in yes. battling this terrible pandemic that has destroyed too many economies, damaged too many families and regrettably killed too many people around the world.
Yes. On that note, thank you so much for talking to StratNews Global, High Commissioner Parul.
Thank you.